Welcome to Learning to Trust with Scott and Becky Quinlan. Our desire is to discuss topics such as marriage, infidelity, forgiveness, our relationship with God, and our journey to find our true identities. Today, we take you on a radical journey of trust. This journey took us to 3 states in 4 years. Come along as we share our lessons learned along the way. Thank you for joining us, and here we go. Welcome to Learning to Trust with Scott and Becky Quinlan. We welcome you today to our next episode in our podcast series. And today we're just going to talk about our really crazy journey after we were radically saved. So, we made a decision to follow Jesus, and it took us into some pretty wild places. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, just looking back at this is the first time we're using notes on any of our videos. So it's weird to see it like on paper. Like I feel like we've lived like 20 lifetimes in the last 8 years.
Yes.
Especially the first 4 years after we got saved. Man, that was, what didn't we do? I mean, it was pretty crazy. So God just radically transformed us. Becky was going through her journal and just flat out where we were talking about and decided and committed together that we were going to follow Christ. I was like, I don't remember that, but makes sense because that's what we did. We've been doing. So
it's what we did. And
yeah.
I don't remember that moment either, but we must have had a conversation at some point that said, this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. And then the unfolding of things after that. And that's really before we even knew what was going on.
Yeah, we were rookie Christians, didn't know anything. Like, I remember the story from Mike down the street. I rolled up on his house like a Saturday or Sunday morning. I was coming back from Home Depot. And that had to have been like right after we got saved because we sold that house like 2 months after we got saved. So I rolled up on him. I was like, hey, I think you're supposed to be discipling me. I'm like, how did that come out of my mouth? I didn't even know what discipling was.
No,
like,
we didn't know.
Just the Spirit obviously was in us. We were born again. We were renewed. We were washed clean. And and by the way, I'm still waiting for God to have someone roll up my driveway and say, hey, I want you to disciple me because like it's like my dream would come true, but we'll see.
Maybe one day.
But
I mean, we didn't even know the concept of being saved. I mean, Mike and Rita, they really sat in our living room, remember?
That was at the other house, though.
So well, I know, but
months after we were saved.
That was months after we were saved, though. Yeah, and they go, well, we think you've been saved. And we're like, what? What does that mean? You know, we were Catholic at the time, so these weren't words or things that really happened or that we had ever seen happen before. So really, it was completely God that was working in our lives at this moment. It wasn't a church. It wasn't a person. It was the Holy Spirit that was leading us in everything. So, really, we really owe everything in this entire story that we're about to share with you to God and His Spirit working through us. And it took us a while to figure out and put all these pieces together. So, man, when God gets a hold of you, He gets a hold of you. And we really felt that now. And we really felt it back then, but we couldn't define it. We didn't know what it was. So let's start where it all began, in that house at Riggs when we were in Kansas City. And we're just going to break this down. This one might be long, so honestly, it may turn into a two-parter. I know not everybody can be fans of a 2-part series, but it's really cool. So we're going to talk. Yeah, let's just talk about it. So
so I guess June 13, 2016, that was the day. I mean, if you listen to our previous podcast, that's the day that Becky found out I was cheating on her. And so yeah, I mean, that was the day I decided to change my life for sure. And that was the day that Becky heard the words "forgive me," and cried out to Jesus, cried out to God like she never had before. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was definitely a huge day. Maybe at the time it didn't feel like a positive way.
No, it was devastating
a lot
at
of
the
hurt.
time.
Oh my gosh, I've never seen so much hurt on someone's face in my life. I never want to see that again. And so yeah, it was definitely a crazy day. But out of that came honesty, vulnerability, truth. um, true love, companionship.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of all the things. I mean, that was
Friendship.
friendship. Yeah, we got back to being friends. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
kind of started ground zero. I mean,
we did.
just looking back at everything that happened is just literally a playbook. Like God gave us the playbook to rebuild everything and to do everything, and with I don't know, it was pretty much a miracle in itself, right? I mean,
Yeah,
really, what happened immediately and over the next 4 years, and then continuing on until now. We've been in Rantoul for 4 years, so the last 8 years have really just been, yeah, miraculous in a lot of ways. And I just really, yeah, I just want to give thanks to God for it. Thanks
absolutely.
for everything, for me cheating and to us where we are now. I would give thanks to everything to God. Just we wouldn't be where we're at without the good or the bad. So
Yeah. And I would say the same thing. I am thankful for that happening, because had that not happened, I know this sounds crazy to be thankful for something that was so painful, but had we not gone through that pain and had that not happened, then we wouldn't know Jesus the way. And I'm sure God could, he would have found a way, I'm pretty sure. But who knows where we would be right now in our walk. And so I am thankful, because we know exactly where we're going. We're going to be in eternity with Jesus. And that's all thanks to him. And this is our story. So that's why we share it. And it's hard, it's difficult. And sometimes
mm,
people think we're nuts for putting our life
mhm.
out here the way that we are. But um, God gave us this testimony. And if it helps even one person, that's why we're doing it.
Yep,
So,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yep.
So I'm still just dumbfounded by the timeline because I haven't looked at it. I don't know if I've ever looked at it like in this perspective, like until you showed it to me this morning. I'm
Yeah.
still just staring at it, kind of disbelief. Like, is this really what happened? Like, did this go down? But you journaled everything, so
I did. I
I don't
did.
doubt it. It's just,
That
I
was
just
a
know,
therapy for me, to write down my feelings at the time, and to go back. It's like reliving it all over again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the amazing perspective that we can see now with
yeah,
eyes on the other side of things. And um and I may even do some snippets on here, just reading my journal entries, because it's pretty fascinating to
yeah,
like go back in time and just see that. Um but so where we were living in a house. It was giant. It was We had everything you could ever imagine. And we'll just recap that story with Anna. I think you tell it really well. So if you want to tell the story, Anna really
yeah,
kind of got this thing going. God worked through her. So,
yeah. We were at a church mass or a Catholic mass
yeah,
downtown KC for a dedication or rededication for a school opening or something you were part of with your job.
yeah,
And I think one of the bishops was speaking. He was talking about he was giving the sermon. He was talking about it's harder for a rich man to go to heaven as for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And so we were praying about that night as a family, and that must have been right after we were saved because man, I can't believe how quick things happen.
yeah.
So it had to have been pretty quick after we were saved. And Anna, a couple hours later, came downstairs crying to Becky and was like, "Man, I just all these toys. I don't let anybody play with them. I let my brother play with them. I hoard them to myself. I've got way too much." And she just gave away all her toys. She
I
made
mean,
up,
she had trash bags full.
yeah,
And she's like, here's a pile for Brady. Here's a
yeah,
pile for Emma. The rest I want to donate. And I mean, she kept very little.
yeah.
And I just remember just
Hmm.
giving her a hug and sobbing, like, what little girl does this? I mean, she was
11,
not even junior high. Yeah,
yeah,
grade
11
school
years
age.
old.
Yeah. And so that kind of started the whole thing, because it got us thinking. We're just looked around our home and we're just like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
we
So
have
that
so much.
I
And
think you were in
so,
Florida visiting your parents,
mhm,
and
just maybe a week or two later.
I get a call from a realtor saying, "Hey, um, somebody's wanting your exact house in your neighborhood," and and so we're like, okay. And so we entertained it, and we just finished remodeling the kitchen. We kind of flipped every house we live in, so that was so. Again, you probably got to use that kitchen about a total of like 2 months before we sold the house.
Well, that's all right.
So there it rolls. So, so yeah, we ended up selling that house, and we were going to rent. We just kind of didn't. A couple things didn't really happen. We were kind of trying to be like downsize and be more agile. We ended up buying another house, smaller house, still a nice house. Um, and we sold. We had garage sale on garage sale, and sold or gave away a bunch of our stuff just moving. And yeah, that happened 2 months after we were saved. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So so we downsized, just moved like a mile east. It wasn't that big of a move. But then we moved in this new house, and did I tell this story about the kitchen?
Not in no, I don't think
Oh,
so.
that
Not in
was
big
somebody else I
detail.
was telling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only thing nice about this house was everything was old and wallpaper and whatnot, and but the kitchen had been remodeled. It had cherry cabinets and soapstone countertops, and it was pretty
It was really
nice.
pretty.
Yeah, big old huge farm sink. I think the first day we moved in and Becky washed dishes, the kids were in the basement playing. They come run upstairs. Hey, there's water coming out of the ceiling. I'm like, what? So sure enough, anytime Becky ran the garbage disposal, water would fly into the wall and come out through the basement ceiling. And so at that point, I was kind of like actually depressed. I think the first time I kind of noticeably remember being a little bit depressed in my life because there's the one thing in the house I didn't have to touch, but now I got to rip out half the kitchen to fix the pipes in the wall because the previous owner just left cast iron pipes in the wall and they had already been deteriorated to the point where they should have been replaced.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that was
But it
kind
wasn't
of
even
the
just the kitchen. Like
yeah
I just remember working on that house and anything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
yeah
I mean, it was yes,
yes
we did not like this house very much. But we started to feel like we had made a poor decision out of our
yes
fear.
yes
We jumped into this home and because we were learning to trust the Lord.
yep.
This
Lack of
was
trust.
not
Yep.
something that we had ever done before. And I think all of the things that were happening were gentle nudges, like we were not meant to be there for
Yeah.
very long.
Yep.
So we developed this idea.
Yeah. I
What was our
remember.
idea? Remember about the RV?
Oh yeah, yeah. About the RV, we were just going to travel around the country and live for Jesus. That's what we were going to do. Yep.
All five of us in an RV full time. It. We were going to sell this house and use the money we made off the house. We were going to buy an RV and just that was going to be our life, right?
Yep.
And so you quit your job, you received a bonus, and we're like, hey, quit your job. We're going to use this bonus. We'll live on this. We'll finish up the house. We'll put it on the market. And the market was hot.
Yeah.
Remember? And I mean, houses were selling the day they were put on the market and for really high prices. And so we're like, this is easy. We're going to buy this. We'll be out of
Yep.
here by June. Right.
Yep.
And so we did. We put the house on the market in June. And I'm missing some stuff. I need to go.
Yeah.
But we
So
can go back.
I remember just sitting in the basement in that room with a big whiteboard, and we were just actually just
Yeah.
going and planning. We're like, this is not what God calls us to do. We didn't trust. So we started getting a plan together. And Becky quit her job in November, soon after we moved in that place, because you just weren't feeling it with the diocese like that.
No, by then I was just seeing things that I did not
Yeah, her
want to
eyes
be
were
a part
open.
of.
Yep.
Yeah. No.
And so same thing with my work. I was just like I lived work. Like that was my deal. Like I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I want to make more money. Like I was just hyper competitive, and so I was starting to see like, well, this isn't really the place for me either. And so, yeah, we ended up that March. So I don't know, 7 months after we moved in that place, I made sure my bonus cleared.
That's right.
in that morning, and I got a pretty good bonus. And I went in there and told my boss I was leaving. He's like, "Oh yeah, you put in your 2 weeks?" I'm like, no, I'm walking out right now. I literally dropped the mic and left. And so yeah,
Yeah.
we took that money, we put windows in the house and finished renovating the house, and we really downsized. I mean, when we put the house in the market, we had nothing left. We got rid of, sold everything. I remember we kept my tools. A lot were my dad's tools. He had passed away right when we moved to Kansas City, and we kept a few other things. I had my smokers back in Illinois, but I mean, we literally got down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
And so,
And
all of our furniture, like everything, we kept.
yeah.
Nothing was sacred to us.
No.
Nothing
Even
was
like
sacred
the china we got
for our
when
wedding.
we
Yeah.
got married.
Yep.
Heirlooms that my mom had passed
Our
down.
bedroom
My
sets our
grandma,
parents gave us when we were kids, gone.
We
Like
just no longer had any emotional attachment to things.
Yeah.
And I know that that was maybe hurtful to some people, but we just really did not, it was not important to us anymore. And also during this time, so this was spring of 2017, we we were still attending mass up until so in May, I went to go visit my dad. He was getting baptized, and I went to his church for the first time, and I was blown away. During a small group, I all of a sudden felt the need to share what had happened between Scott and I, and it was the first time I had shared my testimony with strangers, basically. My dad knew, but that was it. And I just remember them looking at us and just cheering, or me, it was just me at that point, looking at me and just cheering because they were so grateful for what the Lord had done. And I had never been received like that before. Just no matter what had happened in our life, they were just so happy that we had the love of Jesus, and they became family instantly. So I watched my dad get baptized. I remember talking with Maria, the pastor's wife, and she's like, make sure you're in the Word. And at that time, I was reading my Bible a little bit, but she really gave me some great advice on to how to attack the Bible. And so, I brought that back home. I was telling Scott all about this stuff. Then we were still Catholic at the time.
This is before that, actually. So that was before you went down there. A month before you went down there. We're looking at the timelines.
I'm looking at oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I'm getting
she skipped
all messed
over.
up. I'm so sorry. Okay. Well, anyway, right before that. That's right.
That's when Mike and Rita sat down at our kitchen table, explained to us what's been happening to us, explained the mechanics of being saved, I guess we would call that, the theology mechanics of it. What's actually happening to us. We went to their church for the first time, I think, on Good Friday.
Good Friday, yep.
Yep. And so actually each of the men of the church broke down the 7 times Jesus spoke on the cross. And we were just like, just like, I'm probably sure I made a really stupid face right there. Where we were just like, our jaws were on the floor. We're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about scripture, and they're talking about Jesus, and they're talking about like stuff we never heard in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
It's one thing to read the Passion every Easter. It's another thing for somebody to break it down and teach and go through it a different way, So, so we went 2 days later. We went to Easter Sunday service at our church, and it's a massive church. And like, I just remember the priest being like, and his sermon was literally 3 minutes. He's like, and if this many people show up next week, I will keep my sermon 3 minutes again. And it's like, no, we just like we're hanging off of every word of the Christian church we went to.
Yeah.
And this dude's like shorting at 3 minutes so he can keep his tithing up or something. I don't know. So we started going to Christian church, and man, the service was like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes long. We couldn't take enough notes. We couldn't get enough.
And I think to pinpoint the difference is that, we had been Catholic for 14 years, and we knew that Jesus was persecuted. We knew that he died, and we knew that he rose again, but there was a lot more emphasis of Jesus being on the cross. And okay, we knew that happened, right? But going to this other church, this Bible-based church, with them explaining what happened on the cross, like we were starting to understand why Jesus had to die and why he died. So we went from, knowing that he had died and risen to why he had to die and why he rose, and that he paid the penalty instead of us paying the penalty, that he was the one that paid the penalty for our sins. And I still was struggling with that concept, but I think, Scott, you really understood that, and that was all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So going back to that mass, that was the last time we attended the Catholic Church, because with my dealings with the diocese and being on the business end of that church, and also just the masses and the priests that we had come into contact with. We had been given doses of Jesus, but not the full gospel. And so that was our last time.
Yep.
Yep.
And so, so you were down there. We really were kind of in flux. We still had the RV plans, but man, God kind of shut the door on that. So we listed the house there in June, about a month after you were down in Florida, and it didn't sell. And it didn't sell, and it didn't sell, and it didn't sell. And in that time, we went back to Illinois, lived with my mom, lived in our friend's house, went to Portugal for a month.
But don't you
moved
remember
to Florida? Yeah. What?
During that time, we still had the RV thing in our mind.
Yeah.
And we had actually gone to someone who was going to front us the money while we waited for our house to sell. Remember? We had the check in hand and we went to go get it from the bank. And we were going to go meet a guy and pay for this thing. Remember? Yep. And the bank was like, oh, well, it'll be, what was it, like 7 to 10 days before the cash is available. And we're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And we were devastated because we thought this was it, that this was our chance. We're going to lose out on this RV. But later, now we know that God was shutting that down, saying, no, I have better plans for you. And I think had the house sold, we would have absolutely done that. But it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't. And that bonus that he got, we were literally down. We didn't have enough money for the next round of bills in November. But it sold wasn't it like November 1st or something?
Yeah, I just remember we learning 2 lessons there at that time in our lives. I remember we were kind of sitting there in Florida once we got there. So, and by the way, when we moved to Florida, we literally had my truck. We had one vehicle, a U-Haul trailer. We had a couple things in Illinois, but for the most part, everything we owned was in that trucking trailer. We go down there. On the way down there, I'm diverging here. Let me finish that thought. So the 2 lessons we learned were, one, we were just sitting there waiting for things to happen, waiting for me to get a job, waiting for I just remember just kind of sitting there, right? We were not taking action.
No. We were just waiting for God to be like, Scott and Becky, you will do this now.
Yeah.
That's what we were waiting for.
They were trusting a little too much.
Yeah.
And so I remember the pastor at our church here in Florida, I remember him saying, you have to take action. His sermon was about taking action. I was like, we have to take action. So we started taking action. And so, those things kind of went back to being really good. But we were trusting too. And this man, just looking at how I got that job through a neighbor of the church. I got, and then our house sold. The other lesson I think we learned is man, we did not trust God. We were panicking. When we were getting down to the last few months there, we were panicking. We didn't know what to do. We're not gonna have any money. Our house is up. We're gonna start paying our, we got house payments now. We just felt like an avalanche was coming down on us. It felt like at the time. I'm sure it wasn't that dire, but it kind of did.
It was. It felt we were down to, we were running out of that money, and we did not have enough for bills in that November. Yep. But I remember writing in my journal that God is asking us to trust him. And even though we were freaking out, we got a call right at the last minute and said, it's sold. Yep. And it sold, but it sold for way less than what we wanted it to sell. It was fine. But that was because I think we would have made some really dumb choices had it gone our way.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
So
we were excited. We were on fire for the Lord, but we were a little dangerous at this point because we were so excited. We were, Yep.
So in there, right before we moved to Florida, we did go on a trip to Colorado for 3 weeks.
We did.
We was basically camped out of my truck. Essentially, we turned my truck into a camper, kind of, and took off for 3 weeks, visited some family in Amarillo, Texas, and in New Mexico, Los Alamos, New Mexico, and then made our way up to Colorado and went camping there and got to see beautiful mountains and Tierra Verde, or not Tierra Verde, Mesa Verde.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents live in Tierra Verde. So yeah, we got to see a lot of really cool stuff, and that trip was great. But along the way, we met this dude, David,
David. Yep.
which
And
thank goodness you journal because we had to go back and look this all up. But
yeah.
but recently we've been kind of feeling a call to serve. Like we've been really getting our hands dirty with people with addictions and different stuff, and we've I've dealt with that, but not like a substance level, which is different than at a I've been a sexual addiction. So yeah, so just feel like God's been transitioning us from to something new, and we felt like we're reading college. We're really good at serving, we're really good at hosting, we're really good at cooking food and loving on people and hospitality. And this guy didn't know us from anybody, and we're walking on this park. The kids are playing in the park, taking a break. This is in Durango, I think, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And he rolls up. I think he worked for the city. He rolls up on a side by side or golf cart. I think it's a side by side. And he starts talking to us, and we start talking to him. And next thing you know, we're talking about Jesus. And then what? Do you remember? I remember better what he said. You journaled.
Yeah, I should have studied the journal, but basically he was saying, oh yeah, he and his wife were Christians too. They had tried to go on mission somewhere, it didn't work out, and he ended up realizing that they didn't have to go out on missions, that like their mission field was around them. And he told us that he felt, and I felt like it was a little bit prophetic in the way that he was speaking to us. And
For
he
sure.
said, I feel that your gift is service. And Scott and I both looked at each other and we're like, how does he know that? Like, how does it? Because we hadn't really gotten into that conversation with him. But he told us, I just remembered this. He told us to take care of our bodies because whenever we agree to be in service for the Lord, we get attacked.
Yeah.
So we get attacked by our adversary who wants to take us out with health or with whatever. He said to take care of our bodies, and that that what's the laborers are few.
Yeah.
He said the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, and that God wanted to use us in this way. And we're just like dumbfounded. And he started to drive away after that. And both Scott and I just had this like feeling of this divine encounter, like that he was an angel. So we call him David our angel because we looked around.
We turned around, looked, and he was just gone. Like, where'd he go?
I didn't know that little golf cart side by side thing doesn't go that fast.
Yeah.
He literally was gone. So I think we're crazy. I don't care, but that's how we felt. Like that was a divine appointment with David who really kind of put that in our heart, So yeah.
All right. So I think we really have one more little story that gets us to Florida.
Yeah.
So this is from basically the year after first year of our salvation, right? So on the way to Florida on that trip, we had my truck, the U-Haul. We're driving down to Florida, and I just had a gut feeling we needed to go to the Creation Museum, which it's Answers in Genesis owns the Ark in Kentucky, right just south of Cincinnati. But they also own a Creation Museum. But the Ark is their big attraction. That's the most known, right? And I had no desire to go there. In fact, we didn't go there till years later, till a couple years ago.
Which is crazy because our kids were young. You think we would have wanted to go to the Ark Museum, but instead it was really on your heart to do the Creation Museum.
Like, we need to go to the Creation Museum. I remember it. I didn't even know why. We got an Airbnb place we could park the trailer in the back of that house and leave it there for the day, and then drove. It was like 30 minutes from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So I drove down there. I just remember the night before, I didn't do any research. This is why I just feel so appointed, because I didn't do any research. I get a degree in engineering. I love science. Like, I look up the night before. I remember laying in the Airbnb looking up the Creation Museum, and I'm like, what the heck? This is craziness. Like, this is crazy talk. I literally remember we had the kids in the backseat of my truck, and we're driving there. I was like, all right, kids, we're going here with an open mind, but
There's
yeah,
some crazy stuff in there.
yeah. I don't necessarily know or believe all this and stuff. I basically just had the big asterisks on there, like we're gonna have an open mind, but this is I didn't really know why we're there, but we ended up going, and I know when I left that day, I know this is a big another thing, doesn't matter, but and I will never lead with creation or young Earth, but I left that museum 90% sure the Earth was young. And after me doing like 2 or 3 more weeks of research and doing some deep dive and some stuff, I was pretty much 100% sure the Earth was young. But that was not the main point of the museum, though. That's where I learned the main point, and what really pricked my heart and stuck with me was that the Bible, God's word, God's inerrant word, was just that. It was 100% truth, 100% accurate, 100% historically accurate. And it really turned the Bible from a book of stories or fairy tales to like real for me. And that, since that day, has changed my outlook of the Bible. I was kind of reading my Bible before then a little bit, but ever since that trip, man, I hold God's word in high regard. And yeah, that was probably that was a very important step in my growth as a Christian, I think.
Well, yeah, because think of like at least we didn't have exposure. I didn't have exposure to church, but I mean, I'd heard the story of the flood, but it's usually Noah in this cute little boat with these cute little elephants and giraffes sticking out of the top of the boat.
Yeah,
It's not really a biblical picture. It's like a fairy tale. But we had learned about the flood and how it was and how it reshaped the earth, and like there's scientific backing to the flood. There's historical, I mean, we're not going to get into all that, but
I
it
could go
was
on for days.
amazing. I know we could go on and on, but also learning that God did create our world, our
Yep.
universe. And, coming from public school system and all that, like I had bought into, I was animal science major. So I had all these
Big
science
Bang,
classes,
evolution.
Big Bang, evolution.
Yeah.
That's all I had been taught. And to learn that it was what creationism meant.
Yeah.
I mean, we were really starting from ground zero, but it just opened our eyes. And yeah, then we were hungry. We
Yeah.
were hungry for the word. We were reading our Bibles so much and just growing. This was a
Yeah.
time of just crazy growth.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the story from D-Day, June 13th of, was that 16 to just over a year later, I guess.
Yeah. That'll happen in 1 year.
Just over a
So
year and about 4 or 5 months. So
hope we can get this done in 2 parts of
yeah.
3, honestly. But yeah.
Truthfully, this is part 2 of 3 because our very first video
True, that was just kind of the overview.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll resume when we get established in Florida, I guess.
Stay tuned.
All right.
There's more to come. God bless. Thank you so much for joining us. Please check back for part 2. And also like, share, and subscribe to help our ministry reach those in need. And as always, if you have any questions or just seeking a little advice or help, please contact us. We'd love to talk to you. God bless.